Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Appellate Court Judges of the State of Connecticut. Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay. The Honorable Appellate Court of the State of Connecticut is now open and in session. All persons having cause or action pending therein will give their attendance according to law. At this time, please make sure your cell phones are off and no texting or tweeting while you're in the court. You may be seated. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'm going to make an announcement about photographs, and I know that may affect cell phones, so don't despair if you were hoping to use your cell phone as a camera. On behalf of my appellate court colleagues, Judge Grundell, Judge Levine, Judge Beach, Judge Robinson, Judge Sheldon, Judge Keller, and Judge Mahalikos, I am happy to welcome you to the appellate court and to the Connecticut Bar Association's 2013 Law Day celebration. I am particularly pleased that Secretary of State Denise W. Merrill, Judge Susan B. Handy, Connecticut Bar Association President Barry Hawkins, Attorney Eric Parker of WFSB Channel 3 News, as well as parents, students, and teachers are here to participate in this ceremony. We are delighted also that Supreme Court Justice Fleming Norcott is in attendance this morning. It is an honor for me to open this Law Day ceremony, whose theme this year is Realizing the Dream, Equality for All. I would like to start by noting that this is the second year that the appellate court has hosted the Connecticut Bar Association Law Day ceremony. This is a wonderful opportunity to bring members of the bench, the bar, and the public together to celebrate the rule of law in our country. We should all be particularly grateful to the members of the Civics Education Committee of the Connecticut Bar Association for taking the time necessary to organize this important event. Their names are listed on the last page of your program. We, of course, are most thrilled to welcome the students who will be participating in the readings this morning. I commend you all for your interest in the role of government and your participation in these civic activities so early in your education. And I'm sure that this experience will serve you well as you continue your education, both in and out of the classroom. And I know I speak for all of us here this morning when I say that we look forward to listening to these readings and reflecting on the meaning of equality for all. So we're about to begin the ceremony, and I do want to invite all of you to take photographs or video. So if your cell phone is your camera, please feel free to use that. But I do ask you to be mindful of the students who will want to give their full attention to the readings. It is now my privilege to introduce the President of the Connecticut Bar Association, Attorney Barry C. Hawkins.
Good morning, and thank you, Chief Judge DiPantima. As she said, I am Barry Hawkins. I am the President this year of the Connecticut Bar Association. It's an honor and a privilege to be here at the state of Connecticut's beautiful appellate court to celebrate Law Day with this audience. The Connecticut Bar Association and its Civic Education Committee would like to thank everyone for attending this year's Law Day ceremony. We would especially like to thank the following Connecticut schools for their participation in this year's Law Day ceremony. They include students from Cromwell Middle School, Duffy Elementary School in West Hartford, Eastford Elementary School, Frenchtown Middle School in Trumbull, and from my hometown, Park City Magnet in Bridgeport. We are in gratitude to all you students for your dedication, your talents, and your efforts that you are about to partake in making this important ceremony a huge success. This year's Law Day theme, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All, reminds us that the promise of equality under the laws is what has made the United States a beacon to other nations. It is a pledge clearly set forth in the Declaration of Independence and in the opening words of the preamble of the United States Constitution. We, the people, It is, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, the proposition to which this nation is dedicated. The year 2013 marks the 150th anniversary of the issuance of President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which marked the official beginning of the end of slavery in this country. But here in Connecticut, we were already trailblazers in equality in the landmark case of United States versus Armistead. The district court in New Haven in 1840 held that captive Africans aboard a slave ship which made its way to the New London shores were in fact free people who had found refuge in the state of Connecticut many years before the Declaration of Emancipation. It is no surprise that equality is a partner to freedom and justice. In 1963, during the proclamation's centennial, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial and called upon our nation to live up to its great promise enshrined in its founding documents of equality for all persons. 5 decades later, the inspirational word of Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech continued to resonate and challenge us to live up to the national ideal of equality under the law. The legacy of the civil rights movement can be seen in the strides that have been made against discrimination based on race, gender, ethnicity, national origin, religion, age, disability, and in this very term of the Supreme Court, we're adding sexual orientation as one of those rights to be decided. It's a decision that has not yet even been decided by the Supreme Court, but one in which the Connecticut Bar Association was privileged to partake in the decision-making for the Defense of Marriage Act by submitting an amicus brief to the court, which we hope the court will take into consideration as it looks at expanding the possibilities of protections to be expanded to citizens of the United States by the Constitution. This year's Law Day theme provides an opportunity to explore the movement for civil and human rights in our country and the impact that it has had in promoting the ideal of equality under the law. It also provides a forum for reflecting on the work that remains to be done in rectifying injustice, eliminating all forms of discrimination, and putting an end to violations of basic human rights. As Dr. King pointed out in his letter from Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Much progress has been made since Lincoln's promise and in the half-century since Dr. King delivered his historic speech. Segregation and many other legally tolerated discriminatory practices that were accepted in 1963 would be unimaginable today. However, despite all the gains achieved in the United States and in Connecticut, there is much work still to be done. For example, women and minorities remain grossly underrepresented in positions of real power and influence and leadership. Although women and minorities have made many strides in achieving equality, inequities in opportunities and in pay continue to exist. Here again, Connecticut made history. In 1882, Mary Hall was the first woman to make her application to become a lawyer in the state of Connecticut. In opposition to her eventually successful application, it was argued that the law governing the admission of lawyers did not include women. Chief Justice Park of the Connecticut Supreme Court famously wrote, "We are not to forget that all statutes are to be construed as far as possible in favor of equality of rights. All restrictions upon human liberty, all claims for special privileges are to be regarded as having the presumption of law against them." This landmark case, nearly 40 years before the 21st Amendment, effectively rejected the entire jurisprudence of separate spheres under the law. To quote President Dwight David Eisenhower in 1953, "I passionately believe in support for the Constitution of the United States, which, written in the recognition of that all people are the children of God, made no distinction among them by reason of inconsequential factors over which they had no control. I believe as long as we allow conditions to exist that make for second-class citizens, we are making ourselves less than first-class citizens." In closing, as we reflect on this year's Law Day theme of realizing the dream, equality for all, we celebrate the opportunity for equality and freedom under our laws. But we must never take for granted that equality or freedom has been achieved. Rather, we have much work to do before we can realize a future in which all citizens have the opportunity to realize the dream of liberty and equality. I thank you again for this opportunity to be a part of this wonderful event, and I would now like to introduce Connecticut Superior Court Judge Susan B. Handy.
Chief Judge DiPentima, judges of the Appellate Court, Justice Norcott, our special guest this morning, Secretary of State Denise Merrill, Deputy Secretary of State Jamie Spallone, fellow judges, members of the bar, especially members of the Connecticut Bar Association Civics Education Committee, our most distinguished readers, teachers, and family, good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to be here this morning and to be part of what I consider to be what's going to be an exceptional program. I'm particularly pleased to see so many young students and talented students from across our state from 6 different elementary and middle schools. I have the honor this morning of introducing our moderator for the program. Attorney Eric Parker is the co-anchor of WFSB Channel 3 Eyewitness News this morning. Perhaps you caught him before you came to work today. He also is the chief investigative reporter for the Channel 3 I team. Attorney Parker is a graduate of East Lyme High School, one of our own here in Connecticut, and he earned a broadcast journalism degree from the University of Maryland at Philip Merrill College of Journalism. Attorney Parker graduated with honors from the University of Connecticut School of Law in 2010 and was admitted to practice in the state of Connecticut that same year. In his spare time, Attorney Parker is an associate at Romano & Associates, a general practice law firm in Rocky Hill. There he handles various kinds of litigation, including corporate, personal injury, real estate, and estate matters. He was gracious, as always, to find time for us this morning, and we are all very grateful to have him with us. So, our moderator, Attorney Eric Parker.
Chief Judge DiPentima, members of the court, our honored guests today, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you today. I'd like to thank my friend Judge Handy, as well as the Bar Association, for inviting me. I was lucky enough yesterday to be at a Law Day celebration at Superior Court in New Britain. And the theme this year of equality and of the important things that are being recognized this year, these events that have changed the path of our country, as someone who is both involved in the media as well as being a practicing attorney, I have days where I could start with the penal code, I could move on to the Freedom of Information Act, I could hit the practice book a couple of times, maybe the Home Improvement Act, and work my way back around to the penal code before I go to bed and get back in at 4 o'clock the next morning to anchor the news. I can say with all those varied experiences that I'm lucky enough to have, I really appreciate the theme of this, the theme of equality, the theme of promoting the little guy, promoting someone who maybe wouldn't have had the same chances if they didn't have this system of laws that we rely on and that so many of the people in this room are so integral to being a part of. So I'm really honored to be here today. Before you all came in and before the judges took to the bench, we had a few moments for the students to say a few words and to practice, and I can tell you we're all in for a real treat. So we're just about ready to begin. If Alexi and Jessica want to come on up to the microphones. And we'll begin our program. In Congress on July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of the 13 United States of America, including the state of Connecticut, was signed unanimously. Connecticut's signatures were Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, and Oliver Wolcott.
When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
On July 28, 1868, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. Section 1 ensured rights to all citizens in this country.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction, therefore, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
As our country grew, so did our understanding of this phrase, to all citizens. Whereas on the 22nd day of September, in the year of our Lord 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, containing, among other things, the following, to wit.
That on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to oppress such persons or any of them in any efforts they may make for their freedom.
And by virtue of the power and for the purpose aforesaid, I, Abraham Lincoln, do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are, and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons.
And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free, to abstain from all violence, unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that, in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God.
In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. By the President Abraham Lincoln. William H. Seward, Secretary of State.
As a nation, we continue to expand the rights of all our citizens when the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, Section 1, was ratified on August 18, 1920, guaranteeing women's suffrage rights.
The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex.
These rights were broadened once again when our courts recognized the rights of all to equal, free, and integrated public education.
In each of the cases, minors of the Negro race, through their legal representatives, seek the aid of the courts in obtaining admission to the public schools of their community on a non-segregated basis.
In each instance, they had been denied admission to schools attended by white children under laws requiring or permitting segregation according to race. Segregation of white and colored children in public schools has a detrimental effect upon the colored children. The impact is greater when it has the sanction of the law, for the policy of separating the races is usually interpreted as denoting the inferiority of the Negro group. A sense of inferiority affects the motivation of a child to learn. Segregation, with the sanction of the law, therefore has a tendency to retard the educational and mental development of Negro children and to deprive them of some of the benefits they would receive in a racially integrated school system.
We conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Therefore, we hold that the plaintiffs and others similarly situated for whom the actions have been brought are, by reason of the segregation complained of, deprived of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment.
At no time and in no place has this call for the equality of all citizens been made more loudly or more publicly than on August 28, 1963, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity.
But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition.
In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, insofar as our citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so, we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and security of justice.
It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality.
But there is something I must say to my people, who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining a rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. The marvelous new malignancy, which has engulfed the Negro community, must not lead us to distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom.
And as we walk, we could, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. As I say to you today, my friends. And so, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with his vicious racists, with his governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that every valley should be exalted, and every hill and mountain should be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with.
And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died. Land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiding Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the courageous slopes of California. But not only that. Let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
in January 2009, Barack Hussein Obama placed his left hand on a time-worn velvet cover of the 1853 King James Bible of Abraham Lincoln, took the constitutional oath, and became the 44th President of the United States of America. That concludes our program. Let's clap for the students again. At this point, I'd like to introduce the Secretary of the State, Denise W. Merrill, with the presentation.
Thank you very much, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be here today. I worked with the committee that designed this program, and when we first talked about what we wanted to do on Law Day, we came up with lots of ideas for speakers and lectures on equality and justice. But in the end, we decided that the words in our founding documents, spoken with the power of the words from the next generation in this country, were probably the most powerful thing we could do. I hope you agree we were right. Thank you, and I see, I think this really is the true meaning of Law Day. I have a proclamation from the governor and that I will read, and talks about the meaning of Law Day and what we're hoping to accomplish here today. So this is a statement by His Excellency Daniel P. Malloy, Governor. Whereas since 1958, Law Day has been an annual celebration of our country's heritage of liberty, justice, and equality under the law. And whereas Law Day provides an opportunity to highlight civic education and to acknowledge our historic commitment to the rule of law. And whereas our nation recognizes that a fair and impartial judiciary is the foundation upon which our freedoms against unjust oppression and tyranny are built and protected. And whereas our democracy, to remain viable, depends upon our citizens' continued understanding and support of a court system that is free from political pressure and influence. And whereas this year's theme of Law Day 2013, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All, celebrates the 150th anniversary of the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation and will provide an opportunity to explore the movement for civil and human rights in America and the impact it has had in promoting the ideal of equality under the law. And whereas on May 1st, 2013, the Connecticut Bar Association will celebrate Law Day, now therefore I, Daniel P. Malloy, Governor of the State of Connecticut, do hereby officially proclaim May 1st, 2013 as Law Day in the State of Connecticut. I urge all citizens, schools, businesses, legal professionals, and the media in Connecticut to use this occasion to preserve and strengthen the rule of law. And I hope in some measure our ceremony today has helped further this goal. So, thank you. I now get the privilege of giving certificates to all our participants, and I want to thank you again. You were absolutely wonderful, and you bring home those ideals of which we were speaking today, and I could tell that the judges were also quite touched by the ceremony, so thank you so much for participating. It means a lot to us.
Madam
yes,
Secretary, I have the names of each student. So the students, if you would go up to the Secretary as your name is called, the photographer is going to be taking pictures of each person as they go, and then go around the table the other way back to your seat so we don't have a traffic jam. We start with Cromwell Middle School, of course in Cromwell, and Blaze Sarah. Also from Cromwell, Victoria Holodetsky. From Duffy Elementary School in West Hartford, Katie Simpson. From Eastford Elementary School in Eastford, Madeline Grube. Eli Driscoll. Olivia Duncan. Nicholas Jakubowski. Silas Bennell. Colin Glenn. Jake Owens. Dylan Grube. Emma Kellerman. Gabriel Morgia. Alexi Switz. Jessica Weber. Anaje Strode Sims. Leslie Mancata. Ricardo Gale. Roberto Melendez. And Mariah Young Arrington. Mariah, stay up there. Why don't all the students come up, get one last round of applause. We can take a quick picture. Students, thank you. You did a beautiful job, Chief Judge DiPentima. I don't know if a member of the media has ever disrupted your court quite like that, organizing that photo, but I'll send it back to you for your closing remarks into closed court. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Attorney Moore. Secretary of State Denise Merrill, thank you so much for your words. I'm not going to add any except to repeat how moved I think all of us up here on the bench were by the amazing job all of the students did. Thank you. You've brought back some important readings to our to our minds. We read a lot of other things during the day as lawyers and judges, but these are the important ones we should all remember as lawyers, judges, and citizens. So thank you for a wonderful, wonderful job. And I hope that you'll believe me when I say Law Day is my favorite celebration of the legal, or the court year. As a lawyer and as a judge, it has been, and you all have certainly made it the best one ever. Marshall, you can adjourn.
All rise, please.